Welcome to the Luxury Rental Blueprint Podcast, your ultimate guide to creating stunning vacation and corporate rental spaces. Join us as we unveil the secrets to boosting revenue and elevating guest experiences through high-quality design and luxurious amenities. Whether you're a seasoned property investor or just starting out, on this podcast, we aim to provide you with the tools and insights you need to build your own 5-star rental empire. Hello, and welcome to the Luxury Rental Blueprint Podcast. This week, we have none other than Paige Hayes of Hayes & Co., who specializes in remote STR design. Paige is an interior designer, a mom, and a host, and a full-time traveler. She's been in the design industry for over a decade and has always loved designing short-term rentals because of the unique challenges they pose and because of the creativity involved. With over 100 spaces designed, Paige brings an immense amount of knowledge and expertise to the world of STR design. So we are so lucky to have her here today. Thanks so much for being here, Paige.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's not very often that I get to talk about design and you know what I mean? Like with another designer in a situation like this, I feel like I'm just so impressed with what you've created here, and I'm excited to be part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. So why don't you share with us a little bit about how you got started in STR design and some of your experience in that?
Yeah, totally. So I've been doing design for, over a decade now. It's since 2011. So 13 years now, almost. And I started out doing just very high-end residential, like second home design in Steamboat Springs, Colorado with my mom. And we also, on top of that, also did a lot of like ski condos, vacation rentals, that kind of thing. And I really, really liked doing the ski condos. And then like from there, we kind of branched out and did like our clients would ask us to go other places. They had like, also like second homes or vacation rentals in like the Hamptons or other vacation markets. So we would go out and do those, but it definitely wasn't like specialized. It wasn't dedicated at that point. But I kind of tucked it away. I was like, I really like to do this. So when my mom retired, I decided to start my own business. My family and we decided to start traveling full time. And so I kind of started my business like with the idea of that in mind, and then also being able to do things virtually. So that's kind of how I got started. And it all just really built from there. Like I dove a lot more into short-term rental design, like as we were starting to research for our own investments. So we started looking at buying properties to Airbnb. And then as I got like further into like the resources available, I was like, there's no information here on like design. And there's such an opportunity. And this is, I don't know, probably 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe like I can help with those resources. And so just started from there, and it's just built over time and become something really, really awesome.
That's awesome. I love hearing that you kind of followed in your mom's footsteps. I feel like I have such a stronghold on design because my mom as well. So my mom she's not a professional interior designer, but she has done all of it, right? Like she does it for all of her friends and everything. And I have girls and I want them to follow mine. Yeah, I think it's so cool. So cool. So you tell me about how you start your design process for STRs.
So I should also, I guess, mention that like my background prior to doing design is not in design at all. It's anthropology and archaeology. And so that's what I got my degree in. And I've just always really felt very connected to places and the stories of people and the stories of places and kind of like what came before us and how we can like carry that forward into the future. And so that is a very, very strong foundation in how we design properties. We call it the Finding Your Properties Story process. And essentially what it is yes, we want to tell the stories of places through design, but it's also about determining the target guest and why they're coming to the area and, how long they'll be staying. We really deep dive on so many different things and then use that to kind of figure out how can we make the property appeal to this target guest? And what story can we tell that is already kind of existing, and what does the area have going for it? And then we just literally write a story for every single property, every project. And we use that story as the foundation for everything we do moving forward. So for like, even for like our furniture layouts and our space, like function of spaces, for the amenities that we pick, for the styles that we choose from, and the things that we source, branding the property, how the photos are taken, it all goes back to the story that we started with.
I love that. How much time on average would you say that you spend kind of analyzing the avatar and then crafting that story?
We do it in conjunction with our clients. So I will say that the majority of our clients are involved in some way. Like, they care about the property, they care about the process. We usually say like, okay, we know that you've done your research buying a property in this area, and we know you've done it for a reason. So we want you to be part of this story process so that you can also understand kind of like where we end up coming from with the design. So it's a collaborative process. And we actually have a worksheet that, it's a fairly extensive worksheet. We have our clients fill that out ahead of the kickoff call. And then we look at the area as well. And we look at comps. A lot of markets, we kind of already know the market, but we kind of look at ways, like a unique take on it, for instance, or what we can do differently. And then we kind of just bring that all together. So it kind of depends, I would say, maybe on like the scale of the project and how hard it is going to be to kind of wheedle that story out, because sometimes it's a lot harder and sometimes it's a lot easier.
I like this strategy because, no two properties are going to tell the exact same story. So I think it's so unique, and it's the easiest way to differentiate your property from your competitors. And then, people buy into that storytelling. I mean, especially in just kind of today's generation, that stories are a big thing in terms of sales and marketing. So you're just setting it up for success right from the beginning. I love that.
Yeah, that's our hope. And it definitely, like you said, it makes it a lot easier to be different and to be unique when you're relying on the story and not just like the comps, because so often we see people like looking at the comps and saying, okay, to be successful, we need to do the same thing, when really like it's the opposite. Like, to be successful, like you need to do it differently.
100%. Would you say that the avatar kind of dictates the story, or does the story dictate the avatar? Is it totally different?
The avatar definitely dictates the story. But also like the property itself dictates the story as well. So, if it's like a big house on a lake, we're probably looking at like multi-generational avatar, or maybe like corporate retreat, something like that, large groups, versus, a smaller property will dictate like a different avatar. So it's kind of just like a combination. And then also even like the style of the architecture and stuff, like we try to take that into account too and work with that versus like against it, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. At least to me, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, each home is built a little bit differently. I mean, they might have you could have two properties on the same lake, but one has a different view than the other. Maybe yours has a dock, theirs doesn't. There's going to be so many things about your property that might help to define who's going to stay in your house over that house. And so I can see that it kind of can go both ways, in that the property might help tell us a little bit about who's staying there. But then once you know who's staying there, you know how to tell the story through the design.
Yep, exactly.
What would you say is like the biggest challenge that you face when you're doing all of this remotely?
That's a great question. There are always different challenges that come up. And I swear, like, as soon as we like tackle and have a system for one challenge, like something else pops up in its place. So we always have challenges that we are dealing with, but we really do try to like I said, tackle those challenges, get systems and processes in place so that things run smoothly. But traditionally, like getting dimensions has always been a big challenge. Now we have Matterport, which is a game. It's been a game changer. Like when I first started doing virtual design, it was before Matterport was a thing. And so like it would be like marking up like photos of the listings, with like lines and arrows with like a corresponding document with like A, B, C, D. And then I was like, you know what I mean? Like we need this dimension from here to here, this dimension from here to here. And then like a handyman would have to go out and take all of those dimensions, and inevitably, something is wrong. And so we're building 3D models when having to like figure out what's wrong. And Matterport's been a game changer. I mean, it like sometimes has discrepancies too, but really like anybody who's trying to do anything remotely, and I think a lot of people don't realize that you can measure from those. Like there's like a little tape measure. And so you can go in and like measure anything within the Matterport walkthrough. So like light fixture locations, or, if there's like a heater, or you need to know the height for your curtains, like you can figure all that out from Matterport. That's a super helpful tool, especially even for like remote hosts, even if you're not working with a designer.
So I know my photographer has done Matterport. So if let's just say you're doing a cabin in the Smokies, do you just get in touch with the photographer out there that's able to perform the Matterport tour, and then they would send that to you?
Yep, exactly. That's what we normally do. Now there is an app that like anybody can do it on their phone, but we find still that like the best, most reliable results come from like when a real estate photographer goes out and does it. And honestly, it's just not, it's like not very expensive, to be honest. It's about probably what the same price as like sending somebody out to like manually measure the whole property.
Got it. Do you ever find if it's a property that's already furnished, do you ever find that there's weird glitches or anything like that because there are furniture pieces in there? And does it get hard to do measurements and things like that from your Matterport if there is furniture in it?
It's usually not that bad, especially for like the overall spaces, because, there'll be somewhere that you can like get that dimension of like floor to ceiling if you need it. I would say probably like the hardest thing is when there are existing like window treatments or curtains covering the windows, then just figuring out like the actual window heights and exact locations. But we usually try to err on the side of caution when sourcing. So we will source window treatments anyway that have like, like expandable rods, and we leave enough room for, air, or we're not going exactly floor to ceiling. Like we're going somewhere in the middle so that, if there's an inch difference, it's not gonna matter.
That makes sense. Okay. So are there any other tools that you're using then, in addition to the Matterport, that helps you when doing this remotely?
So we do space planning, which I think, hopefully most designers are doing that now, but I think there are still a few out there who don't do like furniture layouts and stuff. But for us, it's absolutely critical because we're not like on site to make sure something's going to fit. So we take the Matterport and then we build a 3D model for every property of the house. So we basically like have the house just like on our computer. We have the 3D of all the rooms. And then we space plan everything. We put in all the furniture, the rugs, we put in, the curtains, the art, we double check sizes of all of that as we source. So that's a super helpful tool for us. And what we use is KuHome, and it's available to like anybody who wants to use it. So it's not a designer specific platform. It does have a tiny bit of a learning curve. It's something that like we teach as part of our programs and courses. But once you kind of like get the hang of it, it's actually really easy to just make a furniture layout, and then that everything will fit.
The program that I use as well, it is an internal or trade program, but it's based off of KuHome. So it's a very similar platform. And honestly, my 12-year-old plays with it. She loves to get in there and build things. I don't know if you're anything like me. You played Sims when you were a kid and all you wanted to do is build little houses. Like that was me.
Oh, that's so awesome.
That's what she loves to get in there and play with it. So I promise, like if the 12-year-old can do it, you can definitely figure it out if you're trying to. Right. And I think that the that like tip of, having somebody do a Matterport and then send it to you. You have all the measurements that you need. You can very easily recreate that property virtually in 3D. And then, 100%, even though I do primarily in full service in-person design, I still make sure that I get floor plans and space planning done, because without it, we're trying to be quick here. And you don't want to buy this sofa, go to get it delivered, and then they tell you it doesn't fit, or you can't get it in the door, or something along those lines. And then you have to deal with the hassle of returning it. And in some cases, you can't return it. So definitely, just for the timeline, we want to make sure that we're measure twice, cut once, right? We don't want to cut twice, measure once.
Yes.
So that's awesome. So let's talk about when you talked about kind of using all of your data that you're pulling in the beginning of the phase. When you're talking about using all that data and telling a story, how do you take that story and translate it into the actual design?
That's a really good question. And so it kind of just builds as part of our method, which I have called the SUF method. It's SUFF, and it stands for story, style, upgrades, function, and fit. And so we do like every step of the SUF method in order, which kind of like each step helps set us up for the next step. So we do story obviously first, and then style comes after that. So we take our story and we start pulling our keywords out of the story, and also looking at the house and whatever, if it's a condo, whatever it is, and just kind of the existing style and the area itself. And we use those keywords to start looking at like style concept pictures, essentially like Pinterest boards. And so we create that for the house as kind of like a vision board, like just pulling all of the style together. And then that really helps us when we get to the sourcing part. And it also kind of helps wrap our mind around, like when you're looking on Pinterest, you're like, oh, I love this for this house. I love how they have, this kind of like banquette bench in the kitchen. So we'll try to incorporate that. And so it helps us with space planning as well. But so style. And then the next is upgrades, which is essentially amenities. But the difference between upgrades and amenities, to us, we call it upgrades because we're not just looking at like what everybody else is putting in their properties and how we can like compete on the same level. Like what we're looking at is making sure that we have everything that everybody else has, and then upgrading that, like making it better, and what we can also like bring to the table that's better and different. So we call it upgrades. And so we take those then, and we do the function part, which is all the space planning. So now we know like, who our guest avatar is and what they're going to be like wanting in terms of like bed layouts, ideally, like how many people we're going to want to try to fit into the property, how many people we're going to need to sit at the dining table. So we use all of that like in our space planning as part of the story to kind of get all of those boxes ticked, do the layouts. And then like we also put in, we'll put in all the dresser sizes, we'll put in the beds, we'll put in the rugs, we put in all of the furniture. And then we'll even start on like a lot of the kind of like ideas for decor and like art walls, accent walls, that stuff. So then we move into fit, which is like fitting it all together, which is the sourcing and the design board. And when we do all of that part. So we already know at that point, like every single item that we need to be looking for and sourcing, where it's going to go, what size it's going to be. And so we just source things that fit into the plan that we already have, basically.
I love that. You mentioned dressers, and I feel like this is a hot topic because I feel like some people are like, no, don't do dressers. Some people are like, yes, you absolutely need dressers. What's your take on dressers in a short-term rental?
My answer to almost literally like any question anybody will ever ask me about short-term rentals and what should or shouldn't go in them is, what is the market? What is the target guest? And because it really depends. It depends so much on, first of all, like what level of furnishing you're offering and who your target guest is, where the property is. And then also it depends like on the size of the room and the layout. I feel like there's no one size fits all answer for almost any question. But like specifically for dressers, my take is they're not 100% necessary if you have a closet and if you have like folding space for clothes. Also, if you are doing like very short-term stays, like if the majority of people are only going to be like 1 to 3 nights, mostly people are going to be unpacking into dressers. But if they're staying any longer than that, like we do suggest you give them the option of somewhere to unpack their clothes that's not just like all hanging. And then the other factor, like if there's a TV in the room, we really do not suggest that you just like leave a TV free floating on the wall. That's me. It's just like my hang up, my bugaboo. Like I do not like it. So even if it's just like a shelf or a console table or something underneath the TV, I always try to put something under the TV, even if it's not a dresser.
Got it. Just for that finished look, that finished feel, right? I can see that. Well, I love that. So do you have an example maybe of how you've used the SUF method, and just maybe, is there an example that you can share with us that, you know, where you've taken a property, you looked into it because of X, Y, because of X, Y, and Z, you determined this is the story that we want to tell with the property, and then maybe some design or upgrade that you did to kind of implement that story?
Totally. So the first one that comes to mind is actually probably because I just shared like the pictures yesterday, but we just wrapped up a project in Sedona, and it is like just this gorgeous house, like right at the base of Thunder Mountain with like the most epic view, outdoor area and pool and stuff. And it's a big house. So one thing about Sedona is you cannot have like, your guest avatar cannot like legally be corporate retreats. But we did want to design the property for larger groups, and looking at the story of Sedona and why people are coming there. It's very much like wellness related, and it's all on vibes, and it's a really cool place historically, but also just kind of for the demographic and what people are going there to do. So we had, just to kind of give an example, we had a bonus room in this house, and we were trying to decide what to do with it. We were like, should we make it an office? Should we make it a media room? Should we make it something else? And what we decided based on the story was that our guest avatar was going to kind of identify with more and be more excited about a wellness space. So what we created was a big like yoga room. So a place where there's just like a bunch of yoga mats. It's big and open. We put big mirrors on the wall, and then some kind of more like Eastern type art that's a little more Zen. And it's really just kind of like a big open space where people can meditate or do yoga, or anything like that. So I guess that's kind of just like an example of using that story and kind of the space, like the region, the location, the house, and what it all has going for it to tell a different story, or to kind of determine the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that what I'm hearing is you took this town. So you said, okay, the property's in Sedona. What do people like to come to Sedona for? They'd love to experience nature. And so they started thinking through like that Zen-like feeling and vibe. And it really dictates everything. I mean, because if you think Zen, you're not going to put like hot pink and, you know what I mean? Like you're thinking Zen, you're not going to put cowboy hats and cowboy boots. Like it makes sense because it really dictates the direction of, everything that you want to look for. And thank God for online purchasing where you can click a filter and go through styles and
Yes.
color schemes. And then you're not looking at 50,000 options of, chairs or artwork online.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
That 100%.
I feel like that's a really good point to make too. And for like anybody who's watching or listening at any point who is like, has ever felt overwhelmed by trying to pull together all their stuff. Like I feel like people really underestimate the power of filters and like the power of Google Shopping, because like all the time, if I'm looking for something specific, I just type exactly what I'm looking for into Google, like, like mid-century, tall, narrow nightstand, dark brown, and then, up at the top of Google Shopping, it'll give me so many good options. And then I start going through those to see which one will work. And it's a great way to find stuff, honestly.
I love that. That's a really good tip. I've never thought of doing that. I literally have never done that. And just to be clear, when she says filters, like we're not talking about filtering your images. We're talking about when you're shopping and, you usually see the little like 3 lines or 3 dots at the top, and you can filter through the results when you're searching. If you're on TJ Maxx and you're looking for a pillow and you get, 50 pillows, you can filter through those, sometimes by price point, sometimes by color, by style, etc. So 100%. I love that. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because like Google, because I'll go to Wayfair too, or if I already know where I'm going to be looking, if I'm like, okay, I know Target has a bunch of great throw pillows right now. I've just seen the collection come out. I'll just go right over to Target. I'll go to throw pillows. That's fine. But if I'm like on a very broader level searching for something, like Google searches across retailers. And you can also even put in the retailer so like Wayfair. If you were to go and type in like a bunch of specific keywords in Wayfair, it would not return you as good of results as telling Google the same thing as putting Wayfair at the end. And then Google's only going to pull the results from Wayfair, but it's going to be like way better results.
Yes, so true, so true.
Transform your real estate investment with Mumford Designs, the boutique interior design firm specializing in short-term and medium-term rental properties. Our data-driven approach ensures your property not only stands out, but consistently delivers 5-star guest experiences. We blend style with strategy, crafting spaces that optimize guest satisfaction and drive top revenue year after year. Our services go beyond aesthetics to provide a full-spectrum solution tailored to real estate investors. We offer a property audit that delivers detailed market research, helping to identify design and amenity opportunities within your market. We also create guest avatar profiles to anticipate guests' needs, driving both design decisions and marketing strategies. From full-service design, sourcing, purchasing, and delivery coordination, to installation and staging, we handle every detail, so investors can sit back and enjoy the results. For more in-depth projects, we also offer construction management, ensuring your design vision is realized with precision. With Mumford Designs, you can trust that your property will exceed guest expectations and boost your revenue potential without you having to lift a finger. Book your discovery call at the link in this episode's show notes to get started. Elevate your investment with Mumford Designs, where smart design meets lasting results.
Have you ever, because you travel a lot with your family, so I'm sure you've been to a lot of locations where some of these properties that you're designing are located, but have you ever had a project come across your table where it's maybe a location that you've never been to? Like, how did you determine who's coming to that area or what they're coming for if you've never really been there?
That's a great question. A lot of the properties that we do are places that I have never been. And it really is it's that story process. And again, like kind of like the collaborative effort with the client, who's already been researching that area and like they're buying there for a reason. And they almost always always know pretty much, at this point, most of our clients are buying informed. They're informed, they're making informed choices about the markets that they are buying in. So we work with them on it. We can also work with, STR Insights, or we can work with like John Bianchi on some of that data if it's critical. But a lot of times it's just about doing a little bit of like research. You can ask ChatGPT. We can look at the comps, and just kind of using logic, to be honest.
Yeah, one of the things that I've tried doing, if I am looking at a property and I don't really know what the best things to do in the area are, is I find comps that I like that are maybe similar in style to what I know I could provide. And I actually go through their reviews. And sometimes they'll tell you, oh, we came for this parade, we came for this event or whatever the case may be. So that's one way too that I know I've been able to look into it in the past.
That's genius.
But I love the idea that you're using these resources that are out there, and then you're also supporting those businesses by using their resources. So I actually really like that.
Yeah, we love working, we love connecting and working with other people in the industry. Honestly, the absolute best project results come from just like a huge amount of teamwork. So from like the property acquisition, the realtor, and if it's STR Insights, helping them find the property, and then we help with the design. Our clients are usually involved. Our clients place the orders. We don't place orders. So like they are definitely involved in the process. They understand like what's going on. And then if we can have like Kim from Launched Host come and do the install and her team, like we know that that's in great hands. There's a contractor involved. They're usually super awesome. And so it's just like this whole range, you know what I mean? Like of like handoffs from people who are all very experienced in this industry and like they know what they're doing. It really honestly does kind of take a village to be successful these days.
Yeah. Collaboration is key, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Well, when you do pass everything over to the property owner, like you've given them the design, you told them exactly what they need to order. How long do you think it takes on average? I mean, I realize that every property owner is probably going to do something different here, but on average, how long does it take your clients to actually set up the property once they have all of those resources from you?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question. So I will say about anybody who does it themselves, like we do work with a lot of like material participants. And so they, for tax purposes, need to be doing it themselves. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for people who are not used to doing it, who don't have like the systems and the easy workarounds and like, the little tips and tricks and stuff for setup. It's a huge undertaking and it's really, really hard to understate it. It's hard to like help people understand that prior to them doing it. So I'll say it always takes longer than they think it will. But it does depend on the size of the property, and it does depend on kind of the client availability, how much time they're putting in. When we work with Launched Host, they do it in a week, and that's their thing. They do it in a week. So it definitely takes a lot of pressure off of the client's plates, but there are also reasons I know that, they need to be doing it themselves. So we try to give them like all of the tools necessary for success. Like we give like a very, very detailed install guide, and our Google Sheet is very BC as well, and has like expediting and like status drop downs and stuff like that. But yeah, in the end, it's a huge undertaking for anybody.
It is. I mean, when we have our inventory sheets, I mean, they are going to be anywhere from like 250 to maybe 500 items long. And that's like individual items, not including quantities.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you talk about ordering that, I mean, the ordering process in and of itself is a feat.
Yeah.
And then managing and tracking those orders and making sure they get delivered when you need them there, and having somebody there that can bring these items in or sending them to a receiver. There's so many different aspects of that, that if you are in a position where you're able to take the help from a team that travels like Launched Host, or there's a few others that travel as well and are able to do something similar. Or if you have a designer that's local in that area that can help you as well. I mean, that's significant, like you say, just like burden off your chest.
And that's a good point to bring up too. Like I think that the value of having like an in-person designer is huge, and it's not available like everywhere, but when it is, having somebody who knows what they're doing. But that's the thing that a lot of people don't get, is that you can't just go with like any designer. It's got to be like a short-term rental designer. It's got to be. Otherwise, like they don't know. It's the same as like a client. Like they don't get it. They don't get everything that goes into it. So it's super specialized. But when you find that person locally, that's an awesome choice.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And there are so many resources out there. Like you say, like there are companies that can help you find your property. And a lot of those companies have the resources in the locations that you're looking at. So that's one place to kind of check into, especially if you're working with like a realtor who's STR friendly. They might have resources in the area that you're looking to purchase the property in terms of maybe some STR designers or really good cleaners or handymen or teams that can help you with that property setup, especially if you're doing it remote. That's one of the things that I admire so much about you and what you do specifically is you're able to do all of this remotely. And there's so much communication that has to happen between the designer, the virtual designer specifically, and the client when you're doing this remotely. Because I mean, you can't be with, I mean, of course, I'm sure you still help people throughout the process, but you can't be with them and hold their hand every single day when you have X number of clients. So you have to be able to communicate that super, super clearly and so that they can take those designs and implement them with your intentions. So I think that that's really something admirable.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely like worked hard on our systems, and things that we have in place now have been hard earned, and we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. But we're always improving, and we learn from every project, and we do make adjustments. After each project, we recap and we do a client feedback, and we really take it to heart. Like, we don't just ask for testimonials. We ask for, how do you feel like the communication went? And, is there anything that we could have done better? And we take it seriously and we try to make changes, or at least like really, carefully consider all of that moving forward. So I think it's like just about trying to keep progressing and adjusting as things change, and doing our best for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. You can tell that it's just sincere too. Like when you talk about that, it's your heart is sincere in that you really are just trying to help somebody, get through this phase of their project and get these properties launched. And a lot of the properties that you're able to help clients launch are super successful. So, I think it shows in the results.
Yay.
For sure. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is the marketing aspect. So I anticipate that, having a proper story from the get-go, just as it's going to kind of direct the design, is also going to direct your marketing. How much simpler would you say the marketing efforts are for clients who already have that story kind of like laid out ahead of time?
I think it makes it a lot simpler, because and that's not something that we still really have a hand in. Like, from time to time, we might be tucked into like helping with, like logo design and like house names and stuff like that. But the marketing and the branding goes so much further than that. But having a very cohesive guest experience, and having like the foundation with that story that includes your target guest, that includes the property, that includes the location, includes the style. Like, you have that story built in and you're ready to create that cohesive experience. And we've already done that through the design, and we've already done that through the amenities. Like, we're telling that story through everything that's in the house. And then the story just needs to continue, like in the listing copy and in the photos. We also think it's really important to tell the story through the photos. So we don't want to have all of the pictures looking the same as every other property either, when we can help it. Like, we want to focus in on the story and on the things that we've added that are those little details that are going to resonate, and make anybody who's looking instantly be like, oh my gosh, this is our place. Like, that's what we're really going for. And we design for that. So we design for that like instant connection when people see the hero image and then they go into the listing and they're like, this is it. And they're really excited and they want to tell everybody about it, that like, this is where they're going to be staying, and the excitement builds. And then we also design to like fulfill that expectation. So I know a lot of people have excited about staying somewhere and they've gotten there and it has not met their expectations because, they put a bunch of work and a bunch of time into the design of like a game room. And then they just didn't really show like the rest, like the bathrooms or some of the other spaces in the pictures, but like nothing else is designed, nothing else fits that story. Or it's not managed well or whatever. So it doesn't meet expectations. So we really like design so that the entire place is immersive, the entire experience, like from very beginning to like when they leave and check out, follows through on the promise of the experience.
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned the photography, just kind of telling the story through those photos too. Does that come into play with like the filter or like the lighting in the photos, like all of that? I'm assuming that would kind of come into play. Is that something that you're talking through with your clients ahead of time? Like if you design a space and you're like, hey, this is going to be it's going to have moody vibes. We're going to do dark colors. Are you are you guiding them ahead of time to say like, when the photographer does the photography, you need to make sure that they're not pulling the brightness up so high that, this really dark, moody green all of a sudden looks like a hunter green. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, because I've seen that happen where I'm like, this would be such a cool place. But in the photos, it's either washed out or vice versa. It's supposed to be this light and bright. And then, there's not enough light in the photos or something like that.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes a lot of it is like different. There are some really great STR photographers out there, but like different photographers are also like exceptionally well suited to kind of like different types of properties and different types of design. So, like some of our projects are great to be that like just very kind of like you said, kind of like bright and bold and kind of grand feeling first images, and then some of our others are like more understated, a little bit more like editorial, moodier, all lights off, natural light. I prefer natural light, but so some of it's like the photographer and we can help, we'll help like recommend people to our clients. And then we also do like FaceTime walkthroughs, like to prep for photography. So making sure that like everything is in place and the pillows are correct and you know what I mean, like curtains are how they should be. We started that. After, again, as a result of having, some projects that came back and were like, oh, wow, really would have been better if they had gotten this right or gotten that right or gotten this right. So now we're like, okay, like we'll walk you through it. And then we also can give suggestions. We'll give suggestions for like some of the detail shots that we want to see that'll help tell that story.
I love that. I know for me, that's a big part of my design process. I mean, because we know that we need these scroll stopping images, these specifically like the first 5 to 10 photos are so important to any listing, whether it's on an OTA or a direct booking website, whether it's in your social media, whatever it is. So I know for me, that's a big part of the design process is thinking through what are those top 5 to 10 photos going to look like? What spaces are we photographing? We tend to allocate more of the budget to those spaces, and then make sure that those spaces are designed really like to the nine, and then just let everything else flow through the rest of the property. So I imagine that would be really important. And I mean, how are they supposed to know, especially if it's a first time property owner, and they've never done it before? How are they supposed to know what they're which areas to stage, or like, oh, I should have thought about putting, coffee in that coffee cup or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Do you work with more first time investors, or do you work with more investors that have like larger portfolios?
It's kind of a mix, but we do work with a lot of first time investors. And then we also have a lot of repeat clients who maybe we started with them when they were first time investors and they're now scaling. And then we also do work with definitely like seasoned investors who have other properties as well. And one reason it's nice to like work with first-time investors is because start that relationship from the beginning, and then we get to work with them again and again as they scale. And we also work with people who like they've done the design themselves before for their other properties. That's fairly common. And then like the unfortunate side of like working with people who have a portfolio and are now coming to us is that oftentimes it's because they had a bad experience with the other designer that they were using. And so that's like kind of a bummer when we get like those people through the door, because I always hope people have like a great experience with their designer, and it should be like a very helpful thing and not a difficult thing. But also then just like resetting kind of those expectations and like readjusting kind of their like attitude towards staying is kind of part of our process at that point too.
Yeah, that's true. You have a full community of designers that you coordinate, but I just have a few designers here local to me, and we get together all the time. And that's one of the biggest things that we talk about all the time is that sometimes our job is a little bit of therapy, because sometimes they have had such a bad experience. Sometimes the property is, there's sentimental attachment to the property or whatever the case may be. And always it's a lot of money that people have to pay to furnish these properties. And sometimes there's, like money things that come into play. So it's so fascinating, all the hats that we wear.
Yeah, absolutely. So many hats.
Not even counting like at home. Then you have like, you take off your work hat, and then you've got all the hats at home too.
Yes, so exactly.
I love that. Well, we are starting something a little bit new. Our podcast in general is fairly new, but we're starting something new where we are going to transition into the end of our episodes with 2 questions that I'm going to ask each guest, just to kind of get everybody's feedback. And I think it'll be very interesting and really good information and good takeaways. So with that being said, I'd love to kind of ask, who is one person who's been super influential in your business and why?
My mom. My mom, because not only like did I work with her and learn everything, that I know about design, or the basis, I should say, like the foundation for my knowledge of what I do now, I learned from her. I've been watching her my whole life. She's run a business my entire life. She's always been very successful and just very like involved, and like her business values have become my business values of like integrity and making sure things are done right, maintaining relationships, communication, and just standing behind your work. But like on top of that, like she was always there for us growing up, like every sports game, every school play, like every Girl Scout meeting, like she was always there. I still don't know how she did what she did, but she is like without a doubt, like my superhero and the most influential person I will ever meet in my life, I think. And she really like instilled in me just like by example that I can do literally anything. So it's amazing. My mom's the best.
Love that. Legacies. That's a legacy in the making. That's awesome. What is your number one piece of advice when it comes to designing a short-term rental?
Good question. Make a plan. That's it. It's to make a plan. There's a lot that goes into that, and it feels overwhelming at first, but there are resources. We have resources available to help, but having that plan in place is always going to save time, money, stress on the back end. So kind of like starting with a plan, being flexible if the plan needs to change a little bit, but like, using the process, that's my best advice.
I love that. Like that's like snaps for that one, because how can you go into it without a plan? I feel just thinking about it makes me so stressed out.
I know.
And honest, you have resources. So we're going to link a lot of Paige's resources in the show notes, but Paige has resources for all of this. If you want to do this totally on your own, you can take one of her courses that teaches you how to design your own short-term rental. She's connected to so many designers across the country. Really, I think there's probably several that are even like out of the country as well in other countries. So I mean, there's tons of resources there. And I mean, just in general, plugging in online, connecting and networking is going to help give you plenty of resources as well. So without a doubt, I think 100% the plan is the way to go. That's a good one. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us today and your time.
Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation. I love talking about design.
Right? We eat, sleep, and breathe it anyway, so we might as well just talk about it for an hour or two.
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't you share with us where we can find you, social media, website, all the things.
Yes. So my design business is Hayes and Company, and we are on Instagram at Hayes_and_company. And then I'm on Facebook, Paige Hayes. I love making connections with people. And our programs are STR Design for Hosts. And so that's where we do all of our trainings for hosts. And we have a community of designers as well, which is the Virtual Designers Inner Circle. So lots of ways to connect, and I really love building community and teamwork. And so definitely open to meeting anybody. I love making friends.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll put all of that in the show notes so you guys know exactly where to find Paige if you want to reach out to her and get in touch. So once again, thank you so very much. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you.